Welcome to my chess opening series. Today I want to look at the Ruy Lopez. The Ruy Lopez arises after the moves e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. As novice players, you will see many players playing bishop c4 and knight c3 here. But as your opposition becomes stronger, you will see many more players playing the heavily respected move bishop b5. Okay, bishop b5. This is the Ruy Lopez or Spanish opening, over 150 years old and one of the most respected chess openings. This opening serves as the backbone of the repertoires of many of the world's strongest players. It was heavily utilized by a number of world champions, such as Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer. The main theme of this opening is to try to achieve central domination. White pressures the c6 knight, as well as the pawn it protects on e5. White has a standard piece development, the so-called Spanish autopilot. He will normally continue castles, c3, d4, rook to e1, and knight bd2 to f1 to g3. The last two maneuvers strong point e4. Some of Black's sharper defenses prevent this autopilot, but it is possible in many games, as I will show you. And here, knight f6 is a solid alternative. Castles, and now knight takes e4, d4, knight d6, bishop takes c6, d takes c6, d takes e5, knight f5, queen takes d8, check, king takes d8, is an interesting sequence known as the Berlin defense. Black gains the two bishops, a known advantage in return for a compromised pawn structure. Also possible is simple development with bishop c5. And now c3. White will control the center with d4, followed by later bolstering e4 with rook e1 and knight bd2. Okay, a6. This is Black's most principled move and occurs roughly 76% of the time in recent play. Bishop takes c6 is often seen and is called the Ruy Lopez exchange variation. This line has provided the battle scene for many heavyweight clashes between the world's elite. White players who have utilized it include Alekseev, Jan Timman, Nigel Short, and Michael Adams. This has arisen about 13% of the time in recent games. D takes c6. And now, note that White can't win a pawn with knight takes e5 due to queen d4, attacking both the knight and the e-pawn. Okay, let's take a look at knight c3. I just want to illustrate one of the typical plans in the Ruy Lopez with this move. White really is threatening to take on e5 now since his e4 pawn is now protected. f6, so Black protects the e-pawn. d4, e takes d4, queen takes d4, queen takes d4, knight takes d4, and now White will try to trade off all the pieces and win the king and pawn endgame on account of Black's compromised pawn structure. Of course, Black will try to avoid trading off too many pieces and will try to make use of his two bishops. Okay, bishop a4. This is the main line. Knight f6, castles. And now knight takes e4. This is known as the open defense, a favorite among Anand, Korchnoi, and Yusupov. White almost always regains his pawn in this line. Play normally continues d4, b5, bishop b3, d5, d takes e5, bishop e6. Black's pieces are more active than in other variations of the Ruy Lopez, but he has more structural weaknesses. White usually plays knight bd2, challenging the black knight. Bishop e7 is the main line, occurring roughly 69% of the time in modern practice. Rook e1, protecting the e4 pawn. b5. Black relieves the pressure on his knight as well as his e-pawn. Bishop b3 is forced. d6, c3, castles, and now the immediate d4 allows Black to put pressure on White's center with bishop g4, attacking the knight and indirectly attacking the d4 pawn, which the knight is protecting. So White players normally play h3 to prevent this move, and now Black has a wide array of options. Knight b8 is the Breyer variation. The knight moves back, making way for the c5 advance. Black can reposition the knight on d7, and the bishop can go on the long diagonal with bishop b7. Now not being blocked by the knight on c6. Play often continues d4, knight bd7, knight bd2, bishop b7, bishop c2, rook e8, and now black can enforce his Spanish autopilot with knight f1, bishop f8, knight g3. Okay, and here now 9 bishop b7, d4, rook e8 is the Zaitsev variation, a favorite of 12th world champion Anatoly Karpov. White can actually force a draw here with knight g5 when black has nothing better than rook f8, knight f3, rook e8, knight g5. However, players can also play on with knight bd2, bishop f8, and now either d5, releasing the central tension, or a4, probing the black queen side. Okay, let's look at knight a5. By far the most popular way to play, known as the Chigorin variation. Black paves the way for a c5 advance, similar to the Breyer variation. Bishop c2, c5, d4, queen c7, knight bd2. And now c takes d4, c takes d4, knight c6, knight b3, a5, bishop e3, a4, knight bd2, bishop d7, rook c1 gives white good play. But let's take a look at the earlier 12 knight c6. Black has claimed some queenside space and now reaffirms his knight to put solid influence on the center. White has two main plans here. d5 closes the center and gives white more central space. In addition, the black knight must now waste another tempo to move itself. White typically uses his pawns to create wing play. Queenside play can be initiated with a4 followed by b4, while kingside play with knight f1, g4, and knight g3 could also be a good plan. Another way of releasing the tension is d takes c5, d takes c5, knight f1, which was a plan favored by 11th world champion Bobby Fischer. However, in modern play this is now considered equal for black. The pawn structure seems to be identical, but there's one very important difference. White can control the d5 square, while black cannot control the d4 square. White can also make use of the f5 square. And now bishop e6, knight e3, rook a d8, queen e2. White can now land a knight on f5, gaining the two bishops after knight takes e7. Black can play to post his knight on d3 with c4, knight d7, knight c5, and knight d3.